Right. And I said earlier that there's an economic driver under this for white males in the United States, but really there's an economic driver for all this stuff. I was intrigued by a study that came out last week. I think Paul Krugman cited it over the weekend in one of his columns, or maybe Monday, about the way in which economic anxieties, almost without exception worldwide, drive people to the right these days and not to the left. And of course, I always say that people aren't going to migrate left in the absence of articulation and popular education. But what do you think about that? I mean, do you see that pattern yourself, and do you see it playing, for example, in these religious currents about immigration and other issues?
Yeah, I do. But part of it is about, I think it's an issue for people who feel like things are out of control. And if you're
it is about that.
Yeah, it's about issue of control. And so if you move to the right, it's about things will get into place. We can get things lined up. We can, we can stop fiscal, this overspending. We can stop this. We can stop that. But the reality of it is that, things move on a fulcrum, right, or this sort of pendulum, and they're going to move back and forth. So if you take the tack that moving, everything is moving to the right, something is going to tip this back to the other side or tip it back to the middle. And I think we're entering into this time where it may look like, especially here in, politically in the U.S., it may look like for a time that this sort of right thinking is winning. But the problem is going to become that, if you move too far to the right, it's fascist, it's untenable. And then the question becomes is how long can you hold this, and how long will the power structure hold it? And I just see too much, there's too much fracturing going on for any of these coalitions to really hold any length of time. I mean, look at, and I'll give a good example. I mean, not that this has anything to do, well, that had a lot to do with us in a certain way, but not a lot to do with religion. If you look at what happened just in the UK elections a couple of weeks ago, this whole issue of not being able to, how you're going to have to put together a coalition. These coalitions don't work. You can't get a majority if things are moving so far to the right that there's no room for consensus. So if you've got real hardliners, you can't move forward. And so I'll be interested. We're doing this today as right here in Pennsylvania, we're having an election day.
Oh yes, you are.
So Sestak and what's his name? So Inspector. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen here? How will these things play out in these sort of regional elections as we go forward to the midterms in November of 2010? I think what we're going to see is a move to the right, but will that move to the right hold? I don't think it will. I mean, I'm willing to put some money down on this right now and say it's only for a season. It's not going to be for any extended length of time.
My dear, I'm gonna have to bet against you on this because if you push things all the way to the right, I mean, I've said for a long time, and I'm not alone in saying this, I actually think it'll never be called fascism, of course, but I think we're in a position where the threat of what, in essence, is an American fascism is quite real, quite potentially imminent. I mean, you have this odd phenomenon in the United States where we have a right populism. I mean, we've got all this stuff about the bank bailouts and all this distress about that, distress about taxes. But it's working. It's manipulated by and working for the right. It's a very peculiar kind of puppetry that you see going on here.
No, I agree with you on that.
And that, and the anxiety, the perpetual anxiety about the future of whiteness in the United States of America. We've got a lot of ghosts here that haunt and torment us. I'm a little fearful about the pendulum business. I mean, at a certain point, the pendulum stops swinging.
Yeah, or else it breaks. Right?
It
breaks.
And I realize that many calming people say, look, we don't have anything like the economic distress that the Germans faced in 1929, 1930. It's not like that here. But I'll tell you, the festering discontent at people whose livelihoods are measurably worse, right? And I was fascinated. I don't know if I'll write this or not, but I'm really fascinated by the fact that it now appears that the little green shoots of growth that we've seen in the economy over the last few months have all to do with the very wealthy spending and with people who hold mortgages that are underwater, stopping paying their mortgages, and so they're back in the malls using money that they no longer give to their bank. That's
exactly.
Not sustainable.
Yeah,
It's not, we laugh, but the disappearance. It really is the disappearance of a stable middle class in the United States has terrible, terrible auspices for our form of government. I just worry about that.
I agree with you. But the point is, and this is what I think is the interesting piece. I mean, and you are free to disagree with me. I think you need a leader. If you're going to be fascist, you need a good fascist leader. I'm sorry, Sarah Palin ain't it.
No, she's not it.
She's not it. The question becomes is if you get somebody that's strong enough, then it means real trouble. But right now, I see it as these pockets of discontent, but with no person to lead them forward. Now, if you subscribe to, I need a leader. This is a populist movement. It lasts for some time, but it needs a coalescing force. And right now, it doesn't have a coalescing force. It doesn't have somebody who can bring all these factions together in certain kinds of ways. They can't bring the independents, the Tea Partiers, all these people who have this level of discontent. I mean, the only person right now, unfortunately, I think who could probably do it, but he'll never run for office because he's too busy spending his money, is Rush Limbaugh. And he does it in a terms of, how do I want to put it, in a way that's a media savvy way, right? But it's not. There's no political leadership because most of these guys are either walking the Appalachian Trail or doing something else, right? So who's it going to be? And that's my bigger question about this not being able to hold this. Who leads it? Because you need somebody. I mean, everybody could get behind George Bush if you're worried about whiteness, because there was George, and he allowed certain minorities like Condoleezza Rice and others because they fit into this mold of this is the good minority person, right? They act like white people, but there's nobody around right now, on any of these sides who I think is even wants to court anybody of ethnicity. I mean, they can't even figure out how to make a coalition that'll hold together. Some of these disgruntled. I mean, how many is it today that's running? Maybe 36 black Republicans, somebody, running for office. They can't even hold the people of color together in their groups. So how are they going to hold the whole thing together?
Well, you don't necessarily do all of this electorally. I mean, it's true that the Germans voted for Hitler, but if you think about the degree of proto-fascism in the U.S. military, the extent of that, and then the sort of the part of the national security world that is completely out of sight, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are ways to do this. I agree with you that at the moment there's no obvious leadership to this, but it doesn't make me sleep any better.
No.
By the way,